Hello, everyone. Just a quick note. I know you're expecting the mailbag podcast at the first Tuesday of the month, but I have been so sick that Amanda and I did not even get a chance to record it. So instead, we're going to take next week's episode, which is a great interview with Andrea Slusarski about pop culture and teaching art. We're going to play that for you today. And then we will be back next week with the mailbag episode. So for now, enjoy this interview with Andrea Slusarski, and next week we will have the April mailbag for you. Welcome to Art Ed Radio, the podcast for art teachers. This show is produced by the Art of Education, and I'm your host, Tim Bogatz. I'm really excited for today's episode. Andrea Slusarski is going to be back on the show. She's always a great time when she comes on. Last time we saw her was at the Now conference. She and I had a great conversation about drawing, brainstorming, creativity at the kickoff, and then she was part of our creative practices roundtable. And in the course of doing those things, we talked about, where we draw inspiration from. And she takes a ton of inspiration from pop culture and visual culture. And I'm very excited to kind of dive into how she does that. And more importantly, dive into how we can use pop culture and visual culture to connect with our students. Because I think there's a lot there as far as capitalizing on big moments, finding shared interests or finding things that we can find common ground on and kind of talk to our students. And then how we can help our students, take those inspirations, those pieces of work from pop culture, visual culture that inspire them and help them transform those into part of their own voice, part of their own artwork. And there's a lot to talk about there. With Slu, I always talk a lot. So let me go ahead and bring her on and we can get this entire conversation started. Andrea Slusarski is with me. Welcome back to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Tim. I am great. Happy morning. And I've been begging you, I think, to do this podcast for years. So
well, we're very excited to have you.
It's my dream.
You can be the AOE's resident pop culture expert.
That's all I ever want to be.
Is that fair? Can we call you a pop culture expert?
Please do. Please do.
All right, we'll do. So yeah, we have a lot that we want to chat about. I guess first I would love to start with just kind of framing all of this in context as far as how pop culture can fit into the art room. So I'd love just kind of your perspective or your experience with that, both on how you personally bring pop culture into your teaching, and also a little bit about how you think those two things fit together. Like, how does pop culture inform art or vice versa? I know those are huge questions, but just if you can frame it a little bit for us, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. So first I'm going to start present day. I'm going to start with kind of my role as an arts professor, my role as a high school art teacher. That feels like another lifetime, but still pop culture was always just a fun way for me to connect with my students.
Yeah.
And, just kind of be fun, be real, like show my students that I too have interest. I too am, hip, I guess you could say. And honestly, though, when you ask that question of how it fits into the art world, I got to back it all the way up to when I was like a baby art teacher in my undergrad. Because I had a very brilliant professor, Dr. Paul Duncombe, and his whole stitch was visual culture. And, we read tons of text about visual culture, and he really framed or opened my eyes at the time because, I'm going to date myself, but like YouTube was new.
Okay. Yep. I remember those days.
Yeah. YouTube was new. Twitter was like very, very small.
Mm-hmm.
We were kind of at this explosion of visual culture and the internet, like really breaking off. And he really framed it as this way of like, this is how we make the art room approachable. This is how we
Mm-hmm.
make our content connect to students' lives. So he really kind of paved that way into making me thinking about, there's something more to visual culture. It's not just this like thing that is happening around us and it doesn't matter in school.
Yeah.
And he really, got me thinking about like, how do I bring in pop culture references? How do I talk about musicians and movies and, those are art, and help my students connect with that. And then, fast forward to today. I love using like memes and GIFs and movie references. They kind of like sprinkle in with all of my content heavy things to kind of lighten things up.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to frame it, to kind of lighten things up. And like you said, it's a way to make things approachable, or make yourself approachable, and give kids something to talk to you about. And I think there are a lot of shared experiences out there. And I guess I'm thinking about, just in the past couple of years, those sort of big pop culture moments that everybody talks about. We don't have that monoculture anymore where everybody's watching the same shows or listening to the same music. Like, everybody has their different niche interests, but there are things that break through. And so I'm thinking about, Taylor Swift in the Eras tour. I'm thinking about, Wicked, or Barbenheimer last summer, or even like the Kendrick Lamar halftime show a couple months ago. Those are all things that got people talking, that almost everybody was talking about, and those became those shared experiences there. And so I guess my question for you is like, how do we capitalize on those big pop culture moments? Like when there are things that everybody's seeing, everybody's talking about, how do you bring those into your classroom? How do you talk about those with your students?
Yeah. And I guess at first, it's like, if something is so big that it's breaking through and it's, having trickles throughout all sorts of generations and people and places, like, that's good art.
Yes. Yes.
Like, that's the goal of the artist in wanting to share their expression.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just feel like those moments when you can see them and like they're in your face, right? So if you're like paying attention, as an art teacher, like you can kind of get a pulse or kind of know. They're just exciting ways to get your students to open up to all the creativity in the world. Like I said, like that's art. That is an artist. Like Taylor Swift is an artist who is expressing her form of creativity across the globe.
Yeah.
That's wild. We haven't like seen that kind of level of expression ever.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Michael Jackson, like respect, but these, pop culture moments, they are sort of my favorite hooks to start a class. Like, did you see that new Beyonce music video? Oh my God, Taylor Swift dropped a new album. I can't think straight. I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan and a huge Beyonce fan. I think that is known, but just to clarify,
that's coming through very strongly.
That's coming through. These I've just always felt are natural ways to connect with my students and just show them how excited I can get about visual culture. And then it's like a reminder to them that they are also a part of this visual culture. And when you give a deeper meaning to music, videos, video games, movies, whatever they're enjoying, graphic novels, like seeing how those things play in our visual culture world, you're just inviting your students to go deeper into the understanding of the thing. And when they have that deeper understanding, I think it also invites them to pay attention more, to actually get more curious about what they really like. You really like, Star Wars? Study George Lucas. How does George Lucas talk about his art. They're new artists, and if they can start to follow their interests, they can go really deep into like where their creativity lies. And again, it's just, again, I feel like I talk to you all this time about like just building students' confidence with art.
Yeah. Yeah.
And students are already analyzing pop culture, being a part of it and talking about, what colored dress did Taylor Swift wear? Why did Kendrick have dancers split down the middle? Like words like symbolism and artist intentions, art analysis is a part of their everyday pop culture. And so it kind of is a way to like hook them in. They're already interested in it. And then I flip it into like, now we're analyzing art.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't even know.
In doing that, Dr. Evil,
Yeah, that's my fingers. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. I want to talk more about that in just a second, but I also want to dive in a little bit more on just the idea of how we do that, how we get kids talking and thinking about art if we don't have those big shared interests. Like, I said before, every kid's pop culture, their visual culture that they're dealing with, that looks different from kid to kid, and they're all like very different from what I'm interested in these days. And so when we don't have those shared interests or shared moments, like how do we kind of talk about that with our kids? How do we get into those conversations if we don't have that easy introduction?
It's a very fair question, because I feel like I'm getting out of touch.
Yeah, no, I mean, like literally 95% of people listening to this are like shaking their heads yes right now.
Like, I don't know what Skibidi Toilet is. I don't. I also don't, to quote my mom here, like, get it.
Yeah.
But I think that you raise a good point where it's like, okay, our culture is going to be different. Because pop culture is so specific to your time.
Mm-hmm.
And my first thought is just like remembering that.
Yeah.
And just like resist that urge to be like, oh, kids these days, I don't get them. Right. They're weird. Like my parents said the same thing about me. Like, and instead just like, I don't know, do the art teacher thing and get curious. And know that you may not like that pop culture. You may not really understand it, but it's just like a curious dive into like what your students' interests are.
Yeah. And, I have talked about this before on the podcast, but at the beginning of the year or beginning of the semester with kids, I ask them to give me recommendations for, like a song I should listen to, a YouTube video I should watch, whatever. Do I have to enjoy it? No. Do I have to understand it? No. But does it open up a conversation? Absolutely it does. And so you can start talking to them about those things. And like you said, just get curious, ask kids about what they're doing. And those can start some of those conversations.
Be open. Sometimes like my students teach me like the coolest things. And then I'm super cool to all my friends.
Yes, absolutely.
Like I literally, this week just had undergrads show me an art teacher they liked on TikTok. And they were like, "You don't have a TikTok, Professor Slew?" And I was like, "No." It's like, I'm an old woman, you guys. But it was, it's fun. It's being able to like kind of connect on that and be curious. And, back to your song thing, like that is my favorite sort of classroom culture move. Mm-hmm. I still do it. I've been doing it for a decade because I love music. And I do want to know what people are listening to.
Yeah.
Because it can open up cool conversations. Like, hey, did you know that this like song you like is actually sampling like a Bee Gees song?
Yeah.
Which is hilarious. So like my students are like, who are the Bee Gees? And I'm like, well, let me tell you. But yeah, that's my favorite move. I always ask for a song. And I make Spotify playlists of all of my student songs. Mm-hmm. If they're okay, like I always like ask to like give me an appropriate song.
Yes.
There's asterisks there. And then I love seeing, I've seen high schoolers and now I see undergraduates, like when it's work time and I play the playlist and their song comes up, like they almost light up. They're almost like, oh my God, A, she listened to me. And then B, they think like, man, Professor Slew's so cool. She listens to... And I'm like, no, you ding dogs. You told me you like this song, so I wanted to listen to it.
Yeah.
And then, again, when you open up that, like back to like, we don't have to share the same pop culture as our students. Like once they see that you are the adult that's not going to shut them down, you would be amazed at the stuff they want to share.
Yeah.
Because then I'm getting like emails like, hey, I listened to this cool song today and I thought of art class. Or, hey, I really like this like anime series on YouTube and I was watching it and in the background they had like a Leonardo da Vinci drawing that we looked at in class. Like that stuff's cool when they can start to see it themselves and then they feel like, again, like super confident and like super like, look at how smart I am. Like I actually know what that image is.
Yeah. And then they're willing to talk to you about it too. Yeah. They're willing to share that. And that is a great feeling.
And then, if you're still kind of stuck of like, oh, that's a lot to do, Slew, you're always trying to blow my mind. Like, thankfully, I would say that there's lots of multi-generational fandoms.
Yeah.
That you can start with. One that pops to my head is Star Wars.
I was going to say, you mentioned Star Wars a bit ago, and I think that's a good place to start.
Star Wars is one of my favorites to get into like funny art arguments over because it is so generational. Like my favorite Star Wars movie is probably different than your favorite Star Wars movie.
I was going to say we're just on, I'm like just enough older than you that you probably like the prequels. I hate the prequels. Yeah.
I love them.
Exactly.
I love them because you know what? They were made for me as a 13-year-old.
Yeah. And I was too old. Like those came out. I was like, oh God, this is ruining everything.
And then I have to stop myself though. Now when I see the new stuff on like Disney Plus where I'm like, oh, this is like for kids. And I'm like,
and you're like,
yeah, I'm not a kid.
Step back and think about it. You're like, oh, exactly. It is exactly made for kids.
Yeah. And I think that's fun. And then like, there's also like other pop culture things that are just like music and movies. There's like Polaroid cameras. Like watch things that come back around. And if students are into that, like you can be like, look at how cool and hip I was. I had a Polaroid camera. Yeah. That's all I'm ever trying to be, Tim, is like cool and hip. And then, speaking of multi-generational, I just like, you got to throw Elton John in there. Cause like what a creative that can span decades of people.
What, like 50, my parents listened to Elton John. Like he's been around for 50 years.
And reinvent, but it's still Elton John, right? Like I still know that that's Elton John. Yeah. But it's like reinventing is connecting with pop culture at the time. Like just to this song with Dua Lipa. What?
Yes. Well, and I've heard him talk about how much he loves Billie Eilish. And like, it's amazing that he's still so involved with all of that. And I love it.
And like, that's the thing about being curious, right? Like here's an artist who loves his art and isn't going to get caught up in like, oh, kids these days are doing blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, like, what are you doing? Like, let's do it together. Like, let's share this. So, yeah, there's all sorts of connections that you can do that, when you just kind of open up like, hey, like, I'm just going to like, I just want to see what my students' pop culture is like. Yeah. And then I might share mine. And then, music's a really fun one because most musicians are really, really good at sharing who their influences are.
Yes.
And, even like the Billie Eilishes and the Sabrina Carpenters and like the pop girlies of today, which that could be a whole podcast of just pop girlies, but you know me, they're really good at like saying like, Joni Mitchell's a huge influence of mine.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, and my daughter's really into Olivia Rodrigo, and well, I am too now after like going to the concert with her. Like this,
you're the coolest dad ever, Tim.
But Olivia Rodrigo has talked about like her love for Billy Joel and for Alanis Morissette. And now my daughter
Queen.
listens to Billy Joel and Alanis Morissette. And I was like, this is amazing. Thank you, Olivia Rodrigo. And now my daughter and I have all these things to talk about and my experiences with Alanis in the 90s. And it's so much fun when you can, like you said, open up those avenues and connect across generations like that. That's a sign of some great work.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Like, she knows that you're open to it.
Yeah.
And they get to be like, have you ever heard of Alanis Morissette?
Like, have I?
Have I? Let me talk to you.
How much time do you have?
I'm like, this one's going to really hit when you have your first heartbreak.
Yeah.
But that's cool, and to keep going on to like pop culture references, I would be remiss to, not like drop in the, like, I'm not like a regular mom. Yeah. I'm like a cool mom.
You're a cool mom.
Yeah, I'm a cool mom. I mean, that's me and my nieces and nephews all the time.
Yeah.
Though. It's sitting down and being like, what's new? What's fun? Like, I totally feel like I'm Amy Poehler in Mean Girls.
Yeah. Well, I love that, you and I are talking about trying to stay hip, but the references that we've dropped are me with Dr. Evil and you with Mean Girls, straight from the, yeah.
Austin Powers, Spy Who Shagged Me, though, still works. Piece of art.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, so let's talk about all of this informing the art that we make or the creative pursuits that we go after. So
yes,
I would love to just kind of know your perspective again on this. Like, how can pop culture and the art that we're paying attention to in those ways, how can that inform our own art making, our own creative pursuits?
And here's where I switch and get really serious.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Creative people are both. They're an and. They can be goofy and fun with pop culture, and they could like really care about their art and understand, the complexities behind it. And so when I'm looking at pop culture, when I'm studying these artists, artists are really teaching us how to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're paying attention to your everyday life, you are finding things that influence you. Just like Olivia Rodrigo being influenced by this music, we get to ask our students, we get to ask ourselves, okay, well, what's the history of the art that's come before you? And how are you going to build on that? How are you going to, take that further? Austin Kleon, author that I really like, he's a writer who draws.
Mm-hmm.
He always talks about like the role of us as artists is to emulate our heroes. So I think when we're like, pop culture is kind of that opening gate to like figure out who your heroes are, who your creative influences are. And then it's your job to emulate them. It's your job to like make Alanis Morissette, I bet, is so proud of Olivia Rodrigo. Like,
yeah,
I always think of that when I'm creating or when I'm thinking about my own work. I'm like, would Karita Kent like this?
Right.
What would Keith Haring think? Like, and I love that kind of exercise I do with like my students. Often I have them build a creative lineage.
Yeah.
And it starts at like pop culture and then it ends up like fanning out into like this beautiful web of like, well, who influenced who? And, like, oh, like, look at all these like connections. Like, this is my history. This is what's going to help inform me to like keep this art going.
Mm-hmm.
And then, back to how pop culture can help our classrooms or help our students think more deeply about their art. It's a great way to look at a moment in time.
Yeah.
And see what's happening. And often that context with students, and I would just say like the general public of people who haven't studied art history, understanding the context of why that art piece was made is kind of important.
Yeah.
And, you need to know what was going on in like the Hudson River School when Thomas Cole was painting.
Mm-hmm.
Like a New Yorker cartoon just like did a Thomas Cole painting. And I love like when my partner is like, he knows that it's art history, but he like doesn't know enough art history.
Right, right.
And he'll be like, what is this? And I'm like, oh, that's Thomas. And I'll be like, well, that's a Thomas
A-
Cole painting.
Again, how long do you have? We can
Yeah,
talk
how long do
about
you
it.
have? Like, do you want to go to a history of like the Hudson River School artist painter? But again, like that's where like that pop culture, right? Like here's a New Yorker cartoon that has just opened the door for a whole history of art history that we would have never had a conversation about.
Mm-hmm.
And um something that you would have never stumbled upon because we live in 2025 and there's visuals and stuff coming at us all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that like pop culture, like I said, can really be that first step into getting our students to be more curious and to getting our students to understand that context is important in art. And it's a lot easier to like have that context conversation with something that they're living and feeling themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can be like, okay, well, why do you think French Romanticism was so important in that time? And it's cool. It's cool to have those conversations. And like I said, I just want my students to like leave my classroom feeling like they're the smartest people in the world.
Well, sometimes when you can give them, that context, that history, those connections, like you talked about, like that's absolutely what's going to happen with them. So I love it, and it goes back to that idea of confidence that you were talking about earlier. And when they have that understanding and that knowledge, they're going to be more confident about what they're doing, what they're researching, what they're talking about, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, and back to sort of that like research or like my undergrad self, think of how many students in your class may have never been to an art museum yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that may feel like very out of their league.
Yeah.
But, the cartoons that they really like, those can like be visuals. Like the Great Wave pops up in so many anime.
Yes.
It almost becomes like a game. Can you find it? And that's just a cool way to like, again, like confidence. Like, okay, maybe you've never been to an art history museum before. Maybe this is like out of like your league at this point in time, but actually like you have been participating in art history and you just didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Okay, so let me ask you. I'm just trying to think of a good way to wrap this up and
Cool.
and to kind of get some advice for people. And I'm just thinking about tying this all together. Taking the interests that our kids have, that our students have, making them a part of their art making. And I'd love to know any advice you have for that, because kids always seem to just default to, I painted a copy of this album cover, or I copied this portrait of, a musician that I like, or a movie star that I like. How do we get them beyond that? How do we get them to reference and appreciate pop culture, but bring it into their work in an original way?
Tim. What a question, and something I think about a lot, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like it's the art teacher's job to teach our students about visual culture and everything that means. So, what is copyright?
Mm-hmm.
What is Creative Commons? What is, why can you sample 10 seconds of a song, but you can't, like, what's a cover? Like, why does that work? Like, Weird Al Yankovic, another
Yeah.
he's under a parody law. What does that mean, right? And instead of just copying, we get to, again, go back to that sort of creative lineage I was talking about. Like, you want to emulate. You want to, as like as young artists, like myself, like you copy your favorite cartoon characters in a sketchbook.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to learn.
It's a great way to learn. And an art teacher who is helping a student connect to what they're into, I think can do a really, like that's where the relationship with your student comes in. Hey, I see you're drawing a lot of Gokus. I'm going to use Dragon Ball Z. I see you like really like this style of drawing. How do you want to make it yours?
Yeah.
How can, let's get really weird. And this project is like a landscape project. Like, how could you like make a landscape that these characters can live in? Like, what's the line quality? What's the color? Like, break it down, analyze it, and help the students see. And just kind of help lead them from that copying stage to this, like, now you're on your own path. And I love when, like, I get this a lot, even with like undergraduates. Like, I just wish I could find my style.
Yeah.
I just, what's my shtick? Like, how am I as a creative? And it's like, you're already doing it. It just takes a little bit more reflection, a little bit more, kind of sitting and incubating to like take that next step, to move into the emulation.
Yeah.
And in the art room, use pop culture to have these conversations. What is copyright? What is plagiarism? Why is this example bad, but this example is okay? And with pop culture, we have lots of examples of that nuance.
Yeah.
Because, you can sample a song. What are the rules that are sampling? And why did, was it Queen? I'm blanking. Why did they get mad at Vanilla Ice?
Ice and Queen, yes.
And then, those are like pop culture moments that you get to like have really cool conversations with students. And I think that, again, it kind of like makes it approachable. Like if I came in and was like, we're going to talk about copyright law today. How boring.
Right.
But if I could have examples, if we could have, I loved when I taught with high schoolers, like setting up little debates.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what a fun way for, students to start to understand. Again, it's very nuanced. It's very hard. What is Creative Commons? What does that mean? What is plagiarism? What are the rules? What are our boundaries? Because as artists, we are asking them to pull from their influences. But then we're saying, but don't plagiarize it.
Yeah, but don't copy. And like that's a tough line to walk sometimes.
It's a very tough line to walk. Especially when you're just starting out and you're new.
Yeah.
And you really just want to draw your favorite avatar characters.
Right.
But what's really cool is like, okay, well, if you make this yours, like that could be really interesting. Like, I want to know what your voice is in this. And that's where like, I like being the art teacher and getting to know students and getting to know what their interests are. And then kind of being that, supportive guide of like, okay, you have something here. Let's think of that. Let's move it. Like, you're obviously drawn to like this color palette. You're obviously drawn to this style. You really like scary movies. Well, start to analyze scary movies. Like, what do you like? And then you can pull those into your photography, right? Like, if you're like, oh, I really like how like lights used in scary movies. Okay, that's something to explore.
I was gonna say, so many avenues to explore with that.
And I think that that's, really fun. And, as a working visual artist myself, I have a lot of, illustrator friends, painter friends. And the thing with like, pop culture being so readily available is I think there is a lot of copying happening. And people just don't understand that that's not okay.
Right.
And so I have a lot of friends, will reach out to me and be like, I think this person's kind of, they like ripped off one of my paintings.
Taking my stuff. Yeah.
And it hurts.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm like, this is a job for the art teachers, because I just think that the majority of people just don't know.
Yeah.
And if we can get them in our high school art classrooms, our middle school art classrooms, and we can have those conversations and they at least understand these terms. Those are going to be adults that, can see the creativity in their world, can see their place in that whole bucket of all the creatives in the world, and just have a better understanding of the art they're living in.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Slu, thank you so much. Super fun conversation. I appreciate your experience and your expertise. And I'm sorry we couldn't talk more about Taylor Swift, but I do feel like we
kept it under control.
Still had a good conversation here. So thank you.
I'm going to update my CV today.
Absolutely.
Pop culture expert. It's been my dream.
I'm glad we could make it come true for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you to Slu for coming on, or should I say thank you to Slu, our resident pop culture expert, for coming on and, sharing all of her ideas with me and, reminiscing about some old music, some old movies, all that stuff that we love. But I think the biggest point is, no matter who you are or where you are, you have those things, whether they are music or movies or other parts of culture that you get excited about. And it's okay for you to let your kids be excited about those. Let kids see you be excited about your own things and embrace what they're excited about as well. You don't have to love it, but you can appreciate it. You can talk to them about it. And hopefully you can get them pointed in the right direction with using those pop culture moments, those pop culture inspirations to inform their own creative pursuit. So, I think the best that you can do there is, like I said, like we talked about, just appreciating what's there, finding that common ground when you can, finding those connections with you can, and making sure that we can take those interests and make them a part of your art making. Art Ed Radio is produced by The Art of Education with audio engineering from Michael Crocker. Thank you, as always, for listening. And as always, we appreciate any time you can share this episode out with anyone else who you think might enjoy it. And if you have time to leave us a rating or review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we always appreciate that as well. We'll talk to you next week.